Today, I'm going to share with you the second puppet I ever made, which was an Audrey II from the character in Little Shop of Horrors. Audrey II is puppeteered in the movie and starts off as a tiny little plant, and it grows into a room-sized, man-eating, singing giant plant. It's a great movie. I recommend you watch it. But I decided to create a puppet from Audrey II using several materials that I had around the house and a couple of art supplies. The first thing I did was take blocks of styrofoam and cut out two halves that would serve as her top part of her face and her bottom part of the face. And to carve it out of the block of styrofoam, I used my trusty electric knife. Once I had the blocks carved out, I then took a green legging and I stretched it over the top block and the second block and glued it into place all the way around, right on the inside of the form. So this is all stretched fabric on top of her, on the top and the bottom. I kept the rest of the legging intact to serve as a sleeve that would become Audrey's stem and place to have your arm. Now, after I had her fabric on, then I started to create the inside of her mouth. She's hinged with a couple of straps here and here, made from felt so that they stay together, but they are very independent and flexible with each other. There's a hole for the top of a hand, and the top of her, and a hole for the thumb in her bottom jaw. I wedged in some other pieces of foam, some flexible foam, to make sure that it was nice and snug, so that when you are puppeteering her, your hand and fingers stay where they belong. Once I had hinged them together, I put felt covering the inside of her mouth, top and bottom, and I even painted some of her designs on the inside of it so that you can kind of see a little bit of her details. You can actually see my hand through here if I take my fingers out of her hold areas. The veining on both the top and the bottom of her are done with hot glue. Just piped the hot glue onto her. And then the rest of the detailing on her surface is just painted on top of the fabric with just a regular acrylic paints. Her teeth are made from hot glue. First, I sculpted a tooth out of air-dried clay, and after it was set, I sculpted a couple of different teeth for her. Then I pushed it into some wet air-dried clay, and while the air-dried clay was still wet, I used hot glue the air-dried clay was a mold, and the hot glue goes into the mold. After it's set, pull them out, and you have the teeth. Now, the hot glue that I used is just a standard translucent hot glue. So I used white nail polish to paint her teeth. As you can see, the white nail polish does scrape off a little bit, but the hot glue does hold the shape of the teeth very, very well. Now, once I had the teeth formed, I hot glued them onto the inside of her mouth, and I actually used hot glue to pipe around the teeth, which I then painted blue for the gums that kind of surround her teeth on the outside of the teeth themselves. You can see right here, that's just all piped around. Now, the main construction of her is just with those homemade items. You have felt, hot glue, styrofoam, paint, legging. But then I did use some specialized art materials for her lips and for her tongue, which can also be puppeteered by a little area that you can put your finger inside of that. I don't usually do it though. It's a little awkward. Now the material that I use for her lips and for the tongue is called foam mo. It's a sculptable foam that when it dries stays a bit flexible. When it dries all the way, it gets quite rigid, and if you do bend it too much, it will crack. But it does let you sculpt it and takes details very nicely into whatever forms that you like. In fact, these are some Mickey Mouse ears that I made using foam mo to create the knockers from Labyrinth, and then painted. Once the foam mo is dry, you can paint it. As you can see, her lips are painted, and that's just using acrylic paints all the way around, blending it kind of into the colors of the puppet itself. And the tongue is also painted, again matching her colors that she would have in the film. Foam mo is very, very nice to work with. I enjoy it a lot. And it's a little pricey, but very much recommended. The last detail on her are her leaves. And I just made the leaves out of some scrap fabric that I had. And I put wire running inside, 2 layers of fabric. I also piped some hot glue on the inside to make a little bit of the veining. And then I used glue and water, and I dipped the whole thing in there and let it all dry. The wire lets me pose it, and the glue holds the 2 layers together and also stops it from fraying. Now, after I did form the leaves and after they were all the way dried, I did take Prismacolor Premier colored pencils, and I added in the blending and the coloring that you see on the leaves. The purples, a little bit of oranges, some highlighting on the veining itself and on the inside. The bottom, same thing, a bit more purple on those bottom leaves, but that's all just done with Prismacolor. So, this is Audrey II, and she is a very, very functional puppet, fun to do, and she was fun to make. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them below. Free to see more.